A businessman risked everything he had to bring affordable medical technology to the poorest in Latin America. On the decisive day, his translator was absent and the deal seemed doomed to fail. It was then that a child, raised among buckets and brooms, emerged as the unlikely heroine of the day. If you were touched by this beautiful story of resilience and love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The early morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of Robert Mitchell's modest office in Boston's Innovation District. At 48, the lines on his face had deepened over the past 3 years, each wrinkle mapping the journey of sleepless nights and relentless determination. His fingers traced the edge of the small device on his desk, a cardiac monitoring system that looked deceptively simple but represented a technological breakthrough that could transform healthcare in underserved communities across America and beyond. "Today's the day, Susan," Robert said to the framed photo of his wife on his desk. Her smile, captured 2 years before the financial strain had begun to show in their marriage, seemed to offer silent encouragement. "Everything we've sacrificed is about to pay off." The CardioGuard, as Robert had named it, was designed to be affordable, durable, and accessible. Everything that current cardiac monitoring systems weren't. It could be operated with minimal training and function reliably even in areas with unstable power supplies. Most importantly, it would cost less than 1/5 of comparable devices on the market. The door to his office opened, and Megan, his 25-year-old assistant, poked her head in. Her normally cheerful expression was strained. "The conference room is ready, Mr. Mitchell," she said, hesitating before adding, "Your wife called. She wanted to remind you about Jamie's science fair tonight." Robert closed his eyes momentarily. His son's science fair. How could he have forgotten? "Tell her I'll be there," he said, though they both knew it might be an empty promise depending on how today's meeting went. Megan nodded, unconvinced. "Mr. Lee and Mr. Jang are scheduled to arrive at 3. They've requested a detailed demonstration of the CardioGuard's capabilities in various environmental conditions. Mrs. Peterson confirmed she'll be here at 2:30 to translate." Mrs. Peterson, a professional Mandarin translator, was essential to today's meeting. Robert's Mandarin was limited to a handful of business pleasantries, and the Chinese investors had made it clear they preferred conducting business in their native language. "Perfect," Robert said, feeling a momentary relief. Everything was falling into place. The two investors represented the Wei Chang Medical Fund, one of China's largest investment groups specializing in healthcare technology. If they liked what they saw today, their investment would not only save Mitchell Medical Technologies from bankruptcy, but would also ensure that the CardioGuard reached the communities that needed it most. Robert picked up the device, allowing himself a moment of pride. 3 years ago, he'd been a comfortable executive at Boston General Hospital, overseeing medical equipment procurement. The idea for the CardioGuard had come during a humanitarian trip to Guatemala, where he'd witnessed a rural clinic lose a patient because their only cardiac monitor had malfunctioned during a power outage. "There has to be a better way," he'd said to Susan that night over a scratchy phone connection. Upon returning to Boston, Robert had become obsessed with creating that better way. Within 6 months, he'd left his secure job to start Mitchell Medical Technologies. Susan had supported his decision initially, believing in his vision, but as their savings dwindled and Robert took out a second mortgage on their Brookline home to fund the development, her support had turned to concern, then to resentment. "You're gambling with our future," she'd said during their last serious argument 3 months ago. "With Jamie's college fund, with our retirement." "I'm investing in our future," he'd countered. "This isn't just about us. Think of all the lives this could save." The memory faded as Megan reappeared in his doorway, her face pale. "Mr. Mitchell, there's a problem. Mrs. Peterson just called. She's in the emergency room. Her appendix ruptured this morning. She's going into surgery right now." Robert felt the blood drain from his face. "What? No, that can't. We need to find a replacement, immediately." Megan was already shaking her head. "I've called every translation service in Boston. It's the Chinese New Year celebration week. Everyone's booked solid. The earliest anyone could get here is tomorrow morning." "That's not good enough," Robert snapped, immediately regretting his tone when Megan flinched. "I'm sorry, But these investors flew in from Shanghai specifically for this meeting. They're leaving for New York tomorrow morning. If we reschedule, we lose our shot. And losing this shot meant losing everything. The company, the house, possibly even his marriage. The bank had made it clear there would be no more extensions on the business loan. Without an injection of capital in the next 30 days, Mitchell Medical Technologies would cease to exist. What about an app? One of those translation programs, Megan suggested, though they both knew it was a desperate idea. For complex medical terminology and a multi-million-dollar negotiation? That's too risky. Robert paced the small office. What about Dr. Chen from research? Doesn't he speak Mandarin? He's at a conference in Chicago until Friday, Megan replied. I've gone through everyone in our network who might speak Mandarin. There's no one available on such short notice. Robert collapsed into his chair, staring at the cardio guard. So close. They had come so close. Maybe we should call Mr. Lee's office and explain the situation, Megan suggested gently. They might be willing to conduct the meeting in English. They specifically said they won't, Robert reminded her. Something about evaluating not just the technology, but our commitment to cultural sensitivity in international markets. He ran a hand through his graying hair. Get Mr. Lee's office on the phone anyway. We have to try. While Megan made the call, Robert pulled up the presentation slides on his computer, as if reviewing them one more time might somehow solve the translator problem. The financial projections showed what he already knew. Without this investment, Mitchell Medical Technologies was finished. He thought about the 43 employees who would lose their jobs, about Susan and Jamie, and the promises he'd made them, about the patients in underserved communities who would never benefit from the cardio guard. 5 minutes later, Megan returned, her expression confirming what Robert already expected. Mr. Lee's assistant was very clear. They conduct all their initial business dealings in Mandarin, especially for investments of this size. It's a matter of principle for them. She hesitated. There is one other option. We could call Transcom Medical and see if they're interested in buying the patent outright. Robert's jaw tightened. Transcom Medical, his former employer's main competitor, had been trying to acquire the CardioGuard patent for months. They'd offered a fraction of its worth, knowing Robert was in financial trouble. If they got hold of it, they'd either shelve the technology to protect their more expensive products, or price it so high that it would defeat the entire purpose of what Robert had been working toward. That's not an option, he said firmly. I didn't sacrifice everything just to see this technology buried or exploited. Megan nodded, understanding but clearly out of ideas. Then what do we do? Robert glanced at his watch. It was 1:15 p.m. The investors would arrive in less than 2 hours. I need some air, he said, standing abruptly. I'll be back in 15 minutes. Keep trying translation services, maybe even look outside of Boston. Providence, New York, anywhere within driving distance. Without waiting for a response, Robert left his office and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed was slipping away because of something as mundane as a translator falling ill. The elevator doors opened on the ground floor, and Robert stepped out, unsure of where he was going but knowing he couldn't stay still. As he passed the building's maintenance office, he heard something unexpected, the lilting sounds of what seemed to be a children's song but not in English. The melody was foreign, yet there was something strangely familiar about the language. Robert paused, his stress momentarily forgotten as curiosity took over. The singing was coming from behind a partially open door marked Maintenance. He approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt the melodious voice. Peering through the gap, he saw a young girl no more than 8 years old, sitting on a desk surrounded by cleaning supplies. She was organizing rags into neat piles, while singing what Robert now recognized as a Mandarin song. Her pronunciation sounded remarkably authentic to his untrained ear. The girl looked up suddenly, sensing his presence. Her almond-shaped eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't appear frightened. "Hello," she said in perfect English without a trace of accent. "Can I help you?" Robert stepped back, embarrassed to be caught eavesdropping. "I'm sorry, I just heard you singing. It sounded like Mandarin?" The girl nodded, a small smile forming on her face. "Yes, it's a song my mom taught me. It's about a little bird looking for spring." Robert stepped fully into the doorway now, his mind racing. "You speak Mandarin?" "Yes, sir. My mom is from Shanghai. She taught me since I was little. The girl extended her small hand with surprising formality. I'm Lily Chen. My dad works here. He's fixing the air conditioning on the 5th floor. Robert shook her hand, noting the intelligence in her eyes. I'm Robert Mitchell. I work upstairs at Mitchell Medical Technologies. He hesitated before asking, How well do you speak Mandarin, Lily? Mom says I speak like a native, she replied with pride. We only speak Mandarin at home. Dad's learning too, but he says I'm much better than him. She switched to Mandarin, speaking a rapid sentence that Robert couldn't understand, then switched back to English. That means language is the bridge between different worlds. A wild, desperate idea was forming in Robert's mind, so inappropriate and improbable that he almost dismissed it immediately. And yet, Is your dad around, Lily? I'd like to speak with him. Lily hopped off the desk. He should be back soon. He went to get a part from his truck. She tilted her head curiously. Are you okay, Mr. Mitchell? You look worried. Robert managed a strained smile. I'm having a difficult day. A very important meeting might fall apart because my translator got sick. Lily's eyes lit up with understanding. A Mandarin translator? Before Robert could respond, the door opened wider, and a man in a grey maintenance uniform entered. He was in his late 30s, with the same almond-shaped eyes as Lily. Lily, who are you talking to? His voice carried a note of protective concern. Dad, this is Mr. Mitchell. He works upstairs, Lily explained. He needs a Mandarin translator for an important meeting. James Chen looked at Robert with a mix of confusion and wariness. I'm James Chen, he said, extending his hand. I'm the building's maintenance supervisor. Robert shook his hand firmly. Robert Mitchell. I own Mitchell Medical Technologies on the 6th floor. He paused, unsure how to proceed with the outlandish request forming in his mind. James seemed to sense his hesitation. Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Mitchell? Actually, Robert began, then stopped, the absurdity of what he was about to ask hitting him full force. No, I'm sorry to have bothered you. It's just that I heard your daughter speaking Mandarin, and I have a meeting with Chinese investors in less than 2 hours, and my translator was just hospitalized. Understanding dawned on James's face. And you need a translator. It wasn't a question. Robert nodded, embarrassed. My company depends on this meeting, but I shouldn't have. It was a ridiculous thought. She's just a child. I could do it, Lily piped up, looking between the two men with eager eyes. I translate for Dad all the time when he talks to Mom's family in China. James placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Lily, this is different from talking to your grandparents on video calls. How different? She asked. Words are words. Robert felt a flicker of hope, quickly dampened by his conscience. It would involve technical medical terminology, business negotiations. No, it's a lot to ask of anyone, let alone a child. I get straight A's in science, Lily offered, and math, and everything else. James gave his daughter a stern look. Lily, this is an adult business matter. Mr. Mitchell needs a professional. All the professionals are busy, Robert said, then immediately regretted it when he saw the considering look that crossed Lily's face. James studied Robert for a long moment. Mr. Mitchell, while I appreciate your situation, I can't allow my 8-year-old daughter to participate in a high-stakes business meeting. Of course, Robert said quickly. I understand completely. It was an inappropriate request. I apologize. He turned to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat, when Lily spoke again. Dad, remember what Mom always said? When someone truly needs help, and you have the ability to give it, there's only one right answer. The words hung in the air. Robert didn't turn around, not wanting to pressure them further, but he heard James sigh deeply. Mr. Mitchell, James called after him, maybe we should discuss this more. What exactly would this meeting entail? Robert turned back, trying not to appear too eager. It's scheduled for 3 p.m. 2 investors from China are coming to see a demonstration of a medical device my company has developed, a cardiac monitor designed for use in underserved communities. They only conduct initial business meetings in Mandarin. Without a translator, there won't be a meeting. James crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. And without this meeting? Robert hesitated before answering honestly. Without this meeting, my company will likely go bankrupt within the month. 43 people will lose their jobs, and a technology that could help thousands of patients will never reach them. His words hung in the small room. James looked at his daughter, who was watching the exchange with intensity, unusual for a child her age. "Dad," she said softly, "Mom would want me to help." James's expression softened at the mention of his late wife. Robert sensed there was a story there, but knew better than to ask. "Let me make a call," James finally said. "I need to check with my sister. She's supposed to pick Lily up at 4. Relief washed over Robert. "Thank you, just for considering it." While James stepped outside to make his call, Robert knelt to Lily's eye level. "This would be a very big favor, Lily. The meeting will involve complex topics." Lily nodded solemnly. "I understand big words, Mr. Mitchell, and I'm good at explaining things. That's what Mom always said." "Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was," Lily agreed, a flash of sadness crossing her young face. "She taught Chinese literature at Boston University before she got sick." The pieces fell into place for Robert. Why this child spoke such perfect Mandarin and seemed so mature for her age. Before he could respond, James returned. "My sister can watch Lily after the meeting," he said, though his expression remained troubled. "But I have conditions. I'll be present in the room the entire time. If at any point I feel Lily is uncomfortable or overwhelmed, we leave. No questions asked." "Absolutely," Robert agreed immediately. "And," James continued, "if this meeting is successful, I want your word that you'll acknowledge my daughter's contribution appropriately. She's not just a convenient tool to be used and forgotten." "You have my word," Robert said solemnly. "If Lily helps make this meeting successful, I'll ensure she's recognized and rewarded for her contribution." James nodded, satisfied but still cautious. "All right then. I need to finish the repairs on the 5th floor. We can meet you at your office at 2:30. As James and Lily prepared to leave, Robert felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Was he placing an unfair burden on a child's shoulders? Was he so desperate to save his company that he was willing to cross ethical lines? The questions plagued him as he returned to his office. Megan looked up expectantly as he entered. "Any luck with the translation services?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. She shook her head. "Nothing. Mr. Mitchell, I think we need to consider postponing." Robert took a deep breath. "I may have found a solution, though it's unconventional. James Chen, the building's maintenance supervisor, has a daughter who speaks fluent Mandarin. They've agreed to help with the meeting." Megan's eyebrows shot up. "A maintenance worker's daughter, how old is she?" 8, Robert admitted, wincing as he said it. 8? Megan repeated incredulously. "Mr. Mitchell, with all due respect, we can't use a child to translate a multi-million-dollar business negotiation. What if she makes a mistake? What if the investors think we're not taking this seriously?" "We don't have a choice," Robert said firmly. "And after speaking with Lily, I believe she's capable. Her mother was a Chinese literature professor at Boston University." Megan still looked doubtful. "And what about the technical terminology? The business jargon?" "We have an hour to prepare her," Robert said. "Pull together a list of the key terms and phrases we expect to use, simplify the technical explanations as much as possible, and pray that it's enough." As Megan reluctantly set to work, Robert sat at his desk and stared at the CardioGuard prototype. Everything now hinged on the linguistic abilities of an 8-year-old girl. It was madness. And yet somehow it felt like the universe had thrown him a lifeline just when he needed it most. At precisely 2:30, there was a knock on his office door. James and Lily Chen stood in the doorway, both looking slightly nervous but determined. Lily had changed into a neat blue dress, and her long black hair was now tied back in a tidy ponytail. "You look very professional, Lily," Robert said, genuinely impressed by the child's composure. Lily smiled, revealing a missing front tooth that reminded Robert of just how young she truly was. "Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Dad said first impressions are important." James Chen stood protectively behind his daughter, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "Mr. Mitchell, before we begin, I want to make sure Lily understands exactly what she's getting into. This is a big responsibility." "Of course," Robert agreed, gesturing for them to enter his office. "Please, come in. We've prepared some materials to help Lily understand the key terms and concepts she'll need to translate." Megan had set up a small area at the conference table in Robert's office with simplified diagrams of the CardioGuard and a list of essential Mandarin terms and their English equivalents, though they would rely on Lily to confirm if the translations were accurate. "This is my assistant, Megan," Robert introduced. "She's been helping prepare for the meeting." Megan smiled warmly at Lily. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily. That's a beautiful dress." "Thank you," Lily replied politely. "My mom bought it for my last birthday before she trailed off, and James placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. An awkward silence fell over the room. Robert cleared his throat. "We have about 25 minutes before Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang arrive. Let me show you what the cardio guard does, and then we can go over some of the specific terms you might need to translate." Lily nodded eagerly, her momentary sadness pushed aside by curiosity. She climbed onto a chair at the conference table as Robert placed the cardio guard device in front of her. "This is a cardiac monitoring system," Robert began, slipping into his well-practiced explanation, but trying to simplify it for an 8-year-old. "It tracks how a person's heart is beating and warns doctors if something goes wrong." Lily examined the device with interest. "Like the machines in hospitals that go beep-beep." Robert smiled. "Exactly like those, but with some important differences. The machines in hospitals are very expensive and need constant electricity. They also require trained technicians to operate them. The cardio guard is much cheaper, works on battery power for up to a week, and is simple enough that anyone can use it after a short training." "So people in places without good hospitals can use it?" Lily asked, demonstrating an intuitive understanding that impressed Robert. "That's right. Places like rural communities, developing countries, or areas recovering from natural disasters often don't have access to the sophisticated equipment in major hospitals. The cardio guard could save many lives in those places." Lily's face grew serious. "That's what my mum needed. She was in a small hospital when she first got sick. They didn't have the right machines to see how bad it was." James squeezed his daughter's shoulder. "That's enough, Lily." But Robert was struck by the connection. "I'm very sorry about your mother, Lily. If you don't mind me asking, when did she pass away?" "Last year," James answered for her. "Acute cardiac event. By the time they transferred her to Boston General, it was too late." The revelation hit Robert like a physical blow. This child, who was now offering to help save his company, had lost her mother to exactly the kind of situation the cardio guard was designed to prevent. The coincidence seemed almost too significant to be chance. "I'm so sorry," Robert said sincerely. "That makes what we're doing here even more meaningful. The cardio guard might have helped in a situation like your wife's." James nodded, his expression stoic, but his eyes reflecting old pain. "That's partly why I agreed to let Lily help. If this device can prevent other families from going through what we did." Megan, who had been quietly organizing papers, spoke up. "Mr. Chen, if you're comfortable with it, would you like some coffee while Lily and Mr. Mitchell review the technical terms?" James hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave his daughter's side. "It's okay, Dad," Lily said. "I want to learn about the heart machine. It's important." After a moment's consideration, James agreed. "I'll be right down the hall if you need me, Lily Bear." "Just 5 minutes." As Megan led James out, Robert turned back to Lily, who was already studying the list of technical terms with intense concentration. "Some of these medical words are really big," she observed, "but I think I know how to say most of them in Mandarin. Mom used to read medical journals to practice her English." "That's very helpful," Robert said, impressed once again by this remarkable child. "Let's go through the most important ones together." For the next 15 minutes, Robert explained cardiac monitoring concepts, business terminology, and the unique features of the cardio guard. To his amazement, Lily absorbed the information like a sponge, asking perceptive questions and offering precise Mandarin translations for key terms. "So, when the QRS complex shows abnormalities, that means the ventricles aren't working right?" she asked, pointing to a diagram of a heart rhythm. "That's exactly right," Robert confirmed, stunned by her comprehension. "How did you know that?" Lily shrugged. "I read a lot. After Mum got sick, I wanted to understand what was happening to her." Robert felt a pang of emotion. This child had faced profound loss and responded by seeking knowledge, a response well beyond her years. "You're a very special young lady, Lily Chen," he said softly. She looked up at him with those serious eyes. "My mum said everyone has special gifts. Mine is languages and remembering things. What's yours?" The question caught Robert off guard. "I suppose seeing problems and finding solutions? That's how the cardio guard started. I saw a problem in a clinic in Guatemala, and couldn't stop thinking about how to fix it. "That's a good gift," Lily declared with the certainty only a child could muster. "It helps people." The door opened as James and Megan returned. James immediately went to his daughter's side. "How's it going, Lily Bear?" "Good," she replied enthusiastically. "I learned about QRS complexes and venture capital and regulatory approval pathways." James raised an eyebrow at Robert, who smiled apologetically. "She's a quick study." Megan checked her watch. "Mr. Mitchell, it's 2:50. We should head to the conference room. Security just called. Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang have arrived in the lobby." A wave of anxiety washed over Robert. This was it, the moment that would determine the fate of his company, his employees, and the cardio guard. And it all rested on the slender shoulders of an 8-year-old girl. "Lily," he said, kneeling to look her in the eye, "if at any point you don't understand something or feel uncomfortable, just let me know. There's no shame in that. This is a lot to ask of anyone, especially someone your age." Lily straightened her shoulders, a determined expression on her young face. "I can do it, Mr. Mitchell, for my mom." The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, nearly brought tears to Robert's eyes. "Then let's go meet our investors." The conference room was impeccably prepared. The cardio guard demonstration unit was set up at one end, with presentation slides ready on the large screen. Water bottles, notepads, and elegant pens bearing the Mitchell Medical Technologies logo were placed at each seat. "Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang will sit here," Megan said, indicating the 2 chairs facing the presentation screen. "Mr. Mitchell, you'll sit across from them. Lily, we've placed your chair next to Mr. Mitchell's." James took a position near the wall where he could observe without being directly in the meeting space. "I'll just be over here," he told Lily. "Remember, if you need a break, just look at me." Lily nodded, her expression now serious and focused. Robert was struck by how different she looked from the cheerful child who had been singing in the maintenance office just an hour ago. There was an almost adult-like concentration in her gaze as she reviewed the terminology list one last time. The intercom buzzed, and Megan answered it. "They're on their way up," she announced, a nervous edge to her voice. Robert took a deep breath and straightened his tie. "Lily, remember what we practiced. You don't need to translate every word exactly. Just make sure the main ideas come across clearly." "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "Don't worry, Mr. Mitchell. I'll do my best." The door opened, and Megan ushered in 2 immaculately dressed Chinese men. The older one, in his 60s with steel-grey hair and piercing eyes, was clearly Mr. Lee. His younger companion, perhaps in his 40s, carried a sleek leather portfolio and had a calculating expression that made Robert instantly wary. "Mr. Lee, Mr. Zhang, welcome to Mitchell Medical Technologies," Robert said, stepping forward with his hand extended. "I'm Robert Mitchell." Mr. Lee shook his hand firmly, his eyes already scanning the room and stopping with visible surprise when they landed on Lily. In perfect Mandarin, Lily stood and offered a formal greeting that included what Robert recognized as their names and titles. The effect was immediate. Both men's expressions shifted from surprise to interest. Mr. Lee responded in Mandarin, his tone questioning. Lily translated smoothly. "Mr. Lee is asking who I am and why there is a child in this meeting." Robert maintained his professional smile. "Please explain that our regular translator had a medical emergency this morning. You are the daughter of our building's maintenance supervisor and are fluent in Mandarin. If they prefer to reschedule with a professional translator, we understand, but we wanted to honor their time and commitment by offering this solution." Lily conveyed this information in fluid Mandarin, adding what seemed to be a personal touch at the end that made Mr. Lee's stern expression soften slightly. "What did you add at the end?" Robert whispered as Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang conferred quietly. "I said that my mother was from Shanghai, like them, and taught Chinese literature at Boston University before she passed away last year," Lily whispered back, "and that she always said business is about trust and flexibility, not just words on paper." Robert was stunned by the child's intuitive diplomatic skills. Before he could respond, Mr. Lee spoke again, and Lily translated. "Mr. Lee says they appreciate our commitment to keeping the appointment. They will proceed with the meeting, but they will be watching carefully to ensure nothing is lost in translation. Tell them we appreciate their understanding and flexibility," Robert replied, relief flooding through him, "and that we're eager to show them how the cardio guard will transform cardiac care in underserved communities. As Lily translated, Robert caught Mr. Zhang studying her with an intensity that seemed odd. There was something calculating in his gaze that made Robert instinctively uneasy. Everyone took their seats, and Robert began his presentation, pausing after each key point to allow Lily to translate. Despite his initial concerns, the meeting flowed surprisingly well. Lily's translations were clear and confident, and she showed remarkable poise when technical terms arose, asking for clarification only once or twice. The investors appeared increasingly engaged as the presentation progressed, especially when Robert demonstrated the cardio guard's durability by deliberately dropping it on the floor and then showing how it continued to function perfectly, a feature that had required countless design iterations to perfect. As the meeting approached the 1-hour mark, Robert could sense that Mr. Li was impressed. Mr. Zhang, however, maintained a more reserved demeanor, occasionally making notes in his portfolio. "And now," Robert said, reaching the crucial part of his presentation, "I'd like to discuss our financial projections and investment proposal." He nodded to Megan, who distributed bound folders containing the detailed business plan to the investors. As Mr. Li and Mr. Zhang began reviewing the documents, Robert noticed Mr. Zhang whisper something to Mr. Li that caused the older man's eyebrows to rise slightly. Mr. Li spoke directly to Lily in rapid Mandarin. She listened attentively, then turned to Robert. "Mr. Li says the financial projections look promising, but he wonders if you have considered the regulatory challenges in Asian markets, particularly China, where approval processes can take twice as long as FDA approval." It was a perceptive question, and one Robert had prepared for. "Please tell Mr. Li that we've factored extended regulatory timelines into our projections. Page 17 shows our pathway to Chinese market entry, including partnerships with 2 Beijing hospitals for initial trials." As Lily translated, Robert observed Mr. Zhang watching her with that same unsettling intensity. When she finished translating Robert's response, Mr. Zhang spoke for the first time, directing a complex question to Lily in Mandarin that seemed to go on for nearly a minute. Lily's brow furrowed slightly as she listened, and Robert noticed her glance quickly at her father before responding to Mr. Zhang in Mandarin. Then she turned to Robert. "Mr. Zhang is asking about your contingency plans if the Weichang investment doesn't materialize. He wants to know what other funding sources you're pursuing and if you would consider a different investment structure than the one outlined in your proposal." The question struck Robert as odd. Why would Zhang be asking about alternative investment structures when they hadn't even discussed the proposed one in detail yet? "Please tell Mr. Zhang that we're fully committed to the partnership with Weichang Medical Fund. While we have received interest from other parties, we believe Weichang's expertise in Asian markets makes them the ideal partner for global distribution of the cardio guard." As Lily translated, Robert noticed her stumble slightly over a few words, the first time she had shown any hesitation during the meeting. Mr. Zhang's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Mr. Li spoke again, and this time his tone seemed more conciliatory. Lily translated, "Mr. Li says they appreciate your commitment to their fund. He suggests that perhaps they should present their counter-proposal now, which addresses some of the points in your business plan, with modifications they believe would benefit both parties." "That would be excellent," Robert replied, feeling a surge of optimism. A counter-proposal meant they were interested, very interested. Mr. Zhang removed a document from his portfolio and handed it to Mr. Li, who passed it to Lily rather than directly to Robert. He said something in Mandarin and Lily nodded. "Mr. Li would like me to translate the key points of their counter-proposal," she explained to Robert. "He says it's informal business Mandarin with some legal terminology, so they want to ensure you understand the important details before proceeding to questions." Robert nodded, trying not to appear too eager. "Please go ahead." Lily began reading the document, translating as she went. "The Weichang Medical Fund proposes an initial investment of $5 million in exchange for a 30% equity stake in Mitchell Medical Technologies." She paused, looking up at Robert. "That's different from your proposal, right? You asked for $10 million for 25%. Robert nodded, impressed that she had remembered that detail from his financial documents. "That's right. Please continue." Lily returned to the document, her expression becoming increasingly confused as she read. They want milestone payments instead of all the money at once. First payment of $2 million upon signing, then $3 million when FDA approval is completed. She frowned. Bert, you said FDA approval was already almost finished. It is, Robert confirmed, his enthusiasm dimming slightly. The structure was less favorable than he'd hoped, but still workable. What else? Lily continued reading, her frown deepening. Suddenly she stopped and looked up at Mr. Zhang with an expression of confusion. She asked him something in Mandarin, her tone questioning. Mr. Zhang responded smoothly, smiling for the first time during the meeting. His response seemed to confuse Lily further. She turned back to the document, reading more slowly now. It says, if Mitchell Medical doesn't achieve FDA approval within 6 months, all the... She struggled with a term, then looked up at Robert. What's intellectual property rights? A chill ran down Robert's spine. It means the rights to the invention, the patents, the designs, everything that makes the CardioGuard ours. Lily's eyes widened slightly. Oh. She looked back at the document. It says if you don't get FDA approval in 6 months, all the intellectual property rights transfer to Wei Chang Fund, even if they've only paid the first $2 million. Robert stiffened. That was an outrageous clause, especially since they both knew FDA approval was already in its final stages. Why include such a provision unless... Is there anything else in the proposal that seems unusual to you, Lily? He asked carefully. She nodded, looking increasingly troubled. There's a part about operational control. It says Wei Chang will appoint a new CEO and Chief Financial Officer immediately after the first payment, even though they're only getting 30% ownership. From his position against the wall, James Chen shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the room. Mr. Lee spoke directly to Robert in halting English for the first time. This standard arrangement, protect investment. Robert maintained his professional demeanor with effort. I understand the need for investment protection, Mr. Lee, but these terms are significantly different from what we discussed in our preliminary communications. Perhaps Lily could continue translating the full proposal, so we have all the details clear. Mr. Lee nodded, gesturing for Lily to continue. She read further, her young voice becoming more uncertain with each sentence. It also says, if Mitchell Medical is acquired by another company within 2 years, Wei Chang gets 50% of the sale price, even if the company is sold for less than the investment amount. She looked up at Robert. Is that normal? No, Robert said quietly. It's not normal at all. Mr. Zhang said something sharply in Mandarin, and Lily flinched slightly at his tone. She responded hesitantly, then turned to Robert. Mr. Zhang says I might be misunderstanding some of the legal terms because I'm young. He says these are standard protections for international investments. Robert forced a smile. Please ask Mr. Zhang if they brought an English translation of the proposal, as is customary in international business negotiations. Lily relayed the question. Mr. Zhang responded with a dismissive wave of his hand, speaking rapidly in Mandarin. Lily translated, he says they didn't prepare an English version because they understood all business would be conducted in Mandarin as agreed. Robert nodded slowly, pieces falling into place in his mind. I see. Lily, please ask Mr. Lee when the Wei Chang Medical Fund was established. Lily translated the question. Mr. Lee appeared momentarily taken aback, before responding smoothly. Lily translated, he says the fund was established 15 years ago in Shanghai and has investments in medical technology companies throughout Asia and Europe. And what was their most recent investment? Robert asked, watching Mr. Zhang's expression carefully. As Lily translated this question, Mr. Zhang's composed facade cracked slightly, a flash of annoyance crossing his features before he controlled it. His answer was brief and clipped. Mr. Zhang says they recently invested in a medical imaging company in Germany, but the details are confidential, Lily translated. Robert nodded thoughtfully. One last question, if you don't mind. Could you ask them for the address of their Shanghai headquarters? We would like to send a formal response to their proposal directly to their offices. When Lily translated this, an unmistakable look passed between Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang. Mr. Lee's answer came after a slight hesitation, which Robert noted with interest. He says their headquarters is at 1078 Nanjing Road, Shanghai, Lily translated. Then she added in a lower voice, "But Mr. Mitchell, I think he made that up. Nanjing Road is where my mom used to take me shopping when we visited Shanghai. The numbers don't go that high." Robert felt a surge of gratitude for this precocious child. "Thank you, Lily," he whispered. Then in a normal tone, "Please thank Mr. Li and Mr. Zhang for their proposal. Tell them we'll need to review it carefully with our legal team before proceeding further." As Lily translated, Robert caught Megan's eye and gave her a subtle nod. They had discussed contingency plans for various scenarios, including one where the investors turned out to be problematic. Megan discreetly took out her phone and typed something, likely a message to building security to be on standby. Mr. Zhang spoke again, his tone more insistent now. Lily translated, "He says they need an answer today. Their flight to New York is early tomorrow, and they have other investment opportunities to consider if you're not interested." "That's unfortunate," Robert replied calmly, "because we never make decisions of this magnitude without proper legal review, especially when the terms differ so dramatically from our preliminary discussions." As Lily translated this, Mr. Zhang's expression hardened. He spoke rapidly to Mr. Li, who nodded, and then addressed Robert directly in his limited English. "Perhaps young girl not translate correct. Legal terms very complex." Robert smiled politely. "Lily has been doing an excellent job. In fact, I'm curious about something." He turned to Lily. "Could you ask them a specific question about the cardio guard? Ask them what they think of the QRS filtration system we discussed earlier." Lily looked confused. They hadn't discussed any QRS filtration system during the presentation because no such feature existed. It was a test. She opened her mouth, presumably to point this out, but Robert gave her a meaningful look and she seemed to understand. She asked the question in Mandarin. Mr. Li and Mr. Zhang exchanged glances before Mr. Li answered confidently. Lily translated, "He says the QRS filtration system is impressive and a key factor in their interest in the technology." Robert nodded, his suspicions confirmed. "Interesting, particularly since there is no QRS filtration system in the cardio guard." The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Mr. Zhang's false friendliness vanished, replaced by a cold stare. Mr. Li's expression remained neutral, but his posture stiffened. "I think," Robert said carefully, "that we should conclude our meeting for today. Clearly, there's been some misunderstanding about the nature of this potential partnership." Mr. Zhang spoke sharply in Mandarin, no longer bothering to maintain his professional demeanor. Lily hesitated before translating. "It's okay, Lily," Robert encouraged her. "What did he say?" "He said you're making a big mistake," Lily translated reluctantly. "He said no one else will invest in your company because they've made sure of it." James Chen immediately stepped forward from his position by the wall, moving protectively toward his daughter. "I think that's enough," he said firmly. "Lily, come here." Mr. Li stood abruptly. "We go now," he said in English, gathering his papers. "Opportunity lost." Mr. Zhang, however, seemed less willing to retreat quietly. He remained seated, his eyes fixed on Robert with undisguised hostility. He spoke again in Mandarin, his tone menacing. Lily, now standing close to her father, translated hesitantly. "He says you should reconsider. Their offer is the only one you'll get. He says your company is already known as a bad investment in their circles." Robert's mind was racing. The implication was clear. These men had been sabotaging his fundraising efforts. That would explain why several promising investor leads had suddenly gone cold over the past few months. "Ask him," Robert said carefully, "how long they've been interfering with my company's investment opportunities." James put a protective arm around Lily. "Mr. Mitchell, I don't think—" "It's okay, Dad," Lily said, her young voice steady, despite the tension in the room. She addressed Mr. Zhang in Mandarin. Mr. Zhang laughed coldly before responding. His answer, translated by Lily, chilled Robert to the bone. "He says they've been watching your company for 8 months. They say Transcom Medical pays well for information about competitors." "Transcom," Robert whispered. "His former employer's largest competitor, and the company that had been trying to buy the CardioGuard patent for pennies on the dollar." The pieces were falling into place now. Mr. Li, apparently recognizing that the situation was deteriorating, spoke sharply to Mr. Zhang in Mandarin. Zhang responded angrily, and an argument broke out between them. "What are they saying?" Robert asked Lily. Mr. Lee is saying they should leave. Mr. Zhang is saying they need to get I think the word means contract or agreement. He's saying they promised someone they would get it today. Robert turned to Megan, who had been quietly observing the increasingly tense exchange. Call security, he said under his breath. Megan nodded and stepped out of the room. Mr. Zhang noticed her departure and abruptly stood up, speaking rapidly to Mr. Lee. Whatever he said caused the older man to look alarmed. He's saying they need to leave now, Lily translated. He's worried about... She stopped suddenly, her eyes widening as Mr. Zhang reached into his jacket. James immediately pulled Lily behind him. That's enough. We're leaving. But Mr. Zhang wasn't reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a small USB drive and placed it on the table, sliding it toward Robert. Final offer, he said in accented English. Take it, or Transcom gets your patents anyway when bank forecloses next month. The direct threat and the fact that Zhang knew about the bank's foreclosure deadline confirmed everything. These weren't legitimate investors. They were corporate spies working for Transcom, trying to either steal the CardioGuard technology outright or ensure it never reached the market to compete with Transcom's more expensive products. Robert remained outwardly calm, though his heart was racing. I think you gentlemen should leave now. Mr. Lee nodded curtly and headed for the door, clearly eager to exit before security arrived. Mr. Zhang, however, lingered, his gaze moving from Robert to Lily with a calculating expression. Smart girl, he said in English, nodding toward Lily. Too smart. Shame. The implied threat toward Lily made James step forward aggressively. You need to leave. Now. The door opened and 2 security guards entered, followed by Megan. These gentlemen were just leaving, Robert said to the guards. Please escort them out of the building and ensure they don't return. As the security guards approached, Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang finally headed for the door. Mr. Zhang paused at the threshold, looking back at Robert. You made big mistake today, he said. Very big. After they were escorted out, a heavy silence fell over the conference room. Lily was the first to speak. Were they bad men? She asked, her voice small but steady. Robert exchanged glances with James, unsure how to answer. They weren't honest, James told his daughter gently. They pretended to be something they weren't. They were trying to steal Mr. Mitchell's invention, Lily said. It wasn't a question. She had understood more of the situation than they had realized. Yes, Robert confirmed, seeing no point in hiding the truth. I believe they were working for a competitor who wants to prevent the CardioGuard from reaching the market. But why? Lily asked. Her young face creased with genuine confusion. Your invention helps people. Why would anyone want to stop that? The innocent question struck Robert deeply. How could he explain corporate greed and market manipulation to an 8-year-old who had just witnessed the darker side of business firsthand? Sometimes, he said carefully, companies are more concerned with profits than with helping people. The CardioGuard would compete with more expensive products, and some people don't want that competition. Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. Like when Dylan at school broke Tommy's project because it was better than his. James smiled sadly at his daughter's analogy. Something like that, yes. Megan, who had been on her phone since the investors left, approached Robert with an urgent expression. Mr. Mitchell, I've been doing some quick research. There is no Wei Chang Medical Fund registered in China or anywhere else. And the business card Mr. Lee gave us? The phone number doesn't exist. I'm not surprised, Robert said, collapsing into a chair as the adrenaline drained from his system. They were imposters from the beginning. But how did they know so much about your company? James asked. They seem to have detailed information about your finances, your patent applications. Robert ran a hand through his hair. That's a very good question. Someone has been feeding them information. Someone with access. A concerning thought struck him. Megan, could you give us a moment? And perhaps take Lily to get a soda or something? Understanding immediately, Megan nodded. Of course. Lily, would you like to see our break room? We have all kinds of drinks and snacks. Lily looked to her father, who nodded his permission. Okay, she agreed, though she seemed reluctant to leave the adults during such an important conversation. Once they had left, Robert turned to James. I hate to say this, but we may have a mole in the company, someone who's been feeding information to Transcom. James leaned against the wall, processing this. You think someone on your team is working against you? It would explain how they knew about the bank's deadline, Our patent status, even the details of the technology itself. Robert shook his head in disbelief. But who? I've worked with most of these people for years. What will you do now? James asked. Those men seemed pretty confident they'd destroyed your chances with other investors. Robert stared at the CardioGuard prototype on the conference table. I don't know. If they've been poisoning the well with other potential investors for months, we may be in an even worse position than I thought. Is the technology really that valuable? James asked. Valuable enough for corporate espionage? The market for cardiac monitoring is worth billions, Robert explained, and the CardioGuard could revolutionize access to that technology in underserved markets. That threatens a lot of very profitable business models. James nodded thoughtfully. My wife would have benefited from something like this. The small hospital where she first showed symptoms didn't have the equipment to properly diagnose her condition. By the time they transferred her to Boston General, he trailed off, the memory clearly still painful. I'm sorry, Robert said sincerely. Your daughter is remarkable, by the way. She not only translated perfectly, but caught discrepancies that most adults would have missed. A hint of pride crossed James's face. Mei Lin, my wife, was determined that Lily would be fully bilingual. She used to say that in the future, those who can bridge cultures will have opportunities others don't. His expression sobered. I never imagined that opportunity would come like this. She saved my company today, Robert said. Without her, I might have signed that fraudulent agreement out of desperation. James straightened up. What happens now? Will those men cause more trouble? Possibly, Robert admitted, but their cover is blown. They can't approach us as investors again, and now that we know Transcom is behind this, we can take precautions. The door opened, and Megan returned with Lily, who was happily sipping a chocolate milk. Mr. Mitchell, Megan said urgently, while we were in the break room, I received a very strange call. Someone from Avalon Ventures wants to speak with you immediately. They said it's about an investment opportunity. Robert's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Avalon Ventures, the healthcare technology fund? We approached them months ago, but they never responded. The woman I spoke with, Jessica Winters, said they've been trying to reach you for weeks but never got through. She seemed surprised when I answered your office line directly. A suspicion formed in Robert's mind. All investor calls are routed through our main switchboard, then to your desk. If someone were intercepting those calls, they could block potential investors from reaching us. Megan finished his thought. Mr. Mitchell, I think we need to check our phone systems, and possibly our email servers too. Robert nodded, his mind racing. First thing tomorrow. For now, call Ms. Winters back and set up a meeting as soon as possible. Use your cell phone, not the office line. As Megan stepped away to make the call, Lily tugged on her father's sleeve. Dad, can I tell Mr. Mitchell what I heard? James looked down at his daughter. What did you hear, Lilybear? When we were walking back from the break room, we passed a room where a lady was talking loudly on the phone. She was saying something about, they failed, and Mitchell still has the prototype. She sounded really angry. Robert and James exchanged alarmed glances. Lily, did you see who this woman was? Robert asked gently. Lily nodded. It was the lady with the red hair who sometimes brings papers to your office. She was in your big meeting last week about the CardioGuard testing. Patricia Reynolds, Robert whispered. Our regulatory affairs director. His stomach sank. Patricia had access to everything. Patent applications, FDA submissions, financial reports, investor communications. Are you sure, Lily? James asked his daughter. This is very important. I'm sure, Dad, Lily replied with the confidence of a child who didn't yet understand the concept of doubt. She was wearing the blue jacket with the shiny buttons that she had on last week, and she said Mr. Lee and Mr. Zhang are useless and that we need another plan. Robert felt a cold fury building inside him. Patricia had been with the company for 5 years. He had trusted her completely, even bringing her into confidential strategic discussions. And all this time, she had been undermining them from within. Megan returned, her expression excited. Ms. Winters wants to meet tomorrow morning. She says Avalon has been following our progress for months and is very interested in the CardioGuard, especially for their emerging markets healthcare initiative. That's exactly the kind of partner we've been looking for, Robert said, momentarily distracted from the revelation about Patricia. Did she say why they haven't been able to reach us? She said they've left multiple messages and sent several emails over the past month. When they never heard back, They assumed we'd found other investors. Megan's expression darkened. Someone has been intercepting our communications, Mr. Mitchell. Patricia Reynolds, Robert said grimly. According to Lily, she was just on the phone discussing the failure of our investors today. Megan's eyes widened. Patricia? But she's been with us since almost the beginning. Which gave her perfect cover, Robert said. We need to handle this carefully. If she realizes we know, she might try to destroy evidence or worse. He turned to James and Lily. I can't thank you both enough for today. You've done more than just help with translation. You may have saved this company. James nodded, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. We should go. My sister will be waiting for Lily, and it sounds like you have a lot to deal with. Of course, Robert agreed, but before you go... He hesitated, then continued. I'd like to do something to thank Lily properly for her help today. Would you be open to discussing that? James seemed about to decline, but Lily spoke up. Did I really help save your company, Mr. Mitchell? Robert knelt to her eye level. You absolutely did, Lily. Without you, I might have signed that fake agreement and lost everything. And you helped us discover who's been working against us all this time. Lily beamed with pride. My mom would be happy I helped. She always said we should use our talents to help others. Your mom was very wise, Robert said softly. And she raised an amazing daughter. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm that had been brewing within Mitchell Medical Technologies. Robert arrived at the office at 6, having barely slept. The revelations of the previous day had left his mind racing with equal parts anger, relief, and determination. He'd spent half the night consulting with the company's legal counsel about how to handle Patricia Reynolds. They had agreed on a careful strategy: gather evidence before confronting her, ensuring they had everything documented for potential legal action. The IT department had been instructed to discreetly monitor Patricia's communications and secure copies of her email and phone records. Security cameras would be checked for any evidence of her removing files or accessing restricted areas after hours. As Robert settled at his desk with his third cup of coffee, Megan knocked on his open door. You look like you haven't slept, she observed, concern evident in her voice. I managed a few hours, he replied, rubbing his eyes. Any word from IT? Megan nodded, closing the door behind her. They've found something already. Patricia has been forwarding company emails to a personal account for months, including your correspondence with potential investors. Robert's jaw tightened. And the phone system. They're still investigating, but they found unusual call forwarding settings on our main investor line. Certain numbers were being redirected away from the company. Avalon Ventures being one of them, I'm guessing, Robert said grimly. Among others, Megan confirmed. Mr. Mitchell, how do you want to handle this? Patricia's scheduled to be in at 9 for the weekly regulatory update meeting. Robert considered his options. We'll proceed as planned. Act normal. Give her no reason to suspect we know anything. The security team will secure her computer and files when she steps out for lunch. In the meantime, I need to prepare for the Avalon meeting at 11. Already taken care of, Megan assured him. I've prepared an updated presentation and the demonstration unit has been checked and recalibrated. Also, I've arranged for it to be held at the Avalon offices rather than here, just to be safe. Robert managed a tired smile. What would I do without you, Megan? Crash and burn, probably, she replied, with a lightness that belied the seriousness of their situation. Oh, and there's something else you should see. She placed a file on his desk. James Chen dropped this off last night after you left. It's Lily's school records. Robert looked at her quizzically. Her school records? Why? Just read them, Megan suggested. I think you'll understand. Robert opened the file and began scanning the documents inside. As he read, his eyebrows rose higher and higher. Lily Chen wasn't just bilingual. She was extraordinarily gifted. Her standardized test scores placed her in the 99.9th percentile nationally. Her IQ had been measured at 158, well into the highly gifted range. There were notes from teachers describing her exceptional memory, analytical abilities, and emotional intelligence. She's been identified as profoundly gifted, Robert murmured, but her father has declined accelerated placement or specialized programs. There's a note at the back, Megan pointed out, a letter from James. Robert turned to the final page, a handwritten letter attached to the file. As he read James's careful handwriting, the full picture emerged. James explained that after his wife's passing, He had been unable to afford the private gifted academy that had offered Lily a partial scholarship. As a single father working multiple jobs to make ends meet, he couldn't manage the remaining tuition, even with help from family. He had been forced to keep Lily in public school, where she was unchallenged and increasingly bored, though her teachers did their best to provide enrichment activities. He's included his contact information, Robert noted, and a request to discuss potential educational opportunities for Lily. Megan nodded. I thought you'd want to see this before making any decisions about how to thank them for yesterday. Robert sat back in his chair, thoughts whirling. An idea was forming, one that seemed perfectly appropriate, given what Lily had done for his company. The Avalon meeting is at 11, he confirmed. Yes, and I've scheduled a car to take you there at 10:30. Make it 10, and have the car stop at the Chen's address first. Robert handed her the letter with James's information. I want to speak with him before the meeting. Megan raised an eyebrow, but didn't question his decision. I'll arrange it. Anything else? Yes, Robert said, his expression hardening. Have security on standby for when Patricia arrives. I don't want to take any chances. At precisely 9 o'clock, Patricia Reynolds walked into the office, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, her red hair styled in a sleek bob. She greeted the receptionist with her usual professional smile, showing no signs of anxiety or guilt. Robert watched her arrival on the security feed from his office, marveling at her composure. How long had she been betraying the company? What had Transcom offered her to sabotage years of work and potentially deprive countless patients of life-saving technology? The morning proceeded according to plan. Patricia attended the regulatory meeting, providing updates on FDA submissions with perfect professionalism. If she noticed any change in Robert's demeanor toward her, she gave no indication. At 10:15, Robert left for his meeting with Avalon Ventures, instructing Megan to proceed with securing Patricia's files as planned. The company car took him first to a modest apartment building in Dorchester, where James Chen lived with his daughter. James seemed surprised when he opened the door to find Robert standing there. Mr. Mitchell, he said, clearly caught off guard. I wasn't expecting you. I hope I'm not intruding, Robert replied. I received your letter and wanted to discuss it in person. May I come in? James hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. Of course, please excuse the mess. Weekend mornings are laundry time. The apartment was small, but meticulously kept, with bookshelves lining one wall of the living room. Robert noticed that most of the books appeared to be advanced texts on various subjects, science, history, mathematics, far beyond elementary school level. Lily's at her aunt's this morning, James explained, clearing a stack of folded clothes from the couch to make room for Robert to sit. She stays there on Saturdays, while I work my second job at the community center. 2 jobs on top of being a single father, Robert observed. That can't be easy. James shrugged. You do what you have to do for your kids. I'm sure you understand that. Robert nodded, thinking of his own son, Jamie, and the science fair he had missed the previous night. Again. I do, which is part of why I'm here. He leaned forward, hands clasped. Mr. Chen, your daughter saved my company yesterday. That's not an exaggeration. Without her intervention, I might have signed an agreement that would have destroyed everything we've built. She has good instincts, James said with quiet pride. She gets that from her mother. She has more than good instincts, Robert countered. I've reviewed her school records. She's exceptional, truly exceptional. And she deserves educational opportunities that match her abilities. James's expression closed slightly. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Mitchell, but as I explained in my letter, private school tuition isn't feasible for us right now. I understand, Robert said carefully, and that's why I'd like to propose something. Mitchell Medical Technologies would like to establish a full educational scholarship for Lily, covering tuition, books, educational materials, and extracurricular activities at any school of your choosing, through college if she desires. James stared at him in shock. That's too much. The translation help yesterday doesn't warrant that kind of response. It's not just about yesterday, Robert explained. Though that alone would justify my offer, it's about recognizing extraordinary potential and ensuring it has the opportunity to flourish. Lily's abilities could take her anywhere: medicine, law, diplomacy, technology. She shouldn't be held back by financial constraints. James was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Why would you do this?" he finally asked. "You barely know us." Robert considered his answer carefully. "When I started developing the CardioGuard, it was because I saw a need that wasn't being met. Patients in underserved communities dying because they lacked access to technology that already existed. The problem wasn't the technology, it was the distribution of resources." He gestured to the advanced books on the shelves. "Lily's situation strikes me as similar. She has the intellectual capacity to do extraordinary things, but lacks access to the resources that would help her develop those abilities fully." James looked down at his hands. "I've tried my best to challenge her. The library helps, community programs, but it's not enough, I know that." "It doesn't have to be all on your shoulders," Robert said gently. "Let me help. Consider it an investment in the future, just like the CardioGuard." "And if I say no?" James asked, looking up with a hint of defiance. "If I believe we can manage on our own, then I'll respect your decision," Robert replied honestly. "This isn't about obligation or creating a debt. It's an opportunity I'm offering freely, with no strings attached." James was quiet again, clearly wrestling with his pride and his desire to provide the best for his daughter. "I would need to think about it. Discuss it with Lily." "Of course," Robert agreed. "Take all the time you need." He glanced at his watch. "I have a meeting with investors in 30 minutes. "Potential investors," he corrected himself with a small smile. "Real ones this time." "About that," James said, his expression serious. "Have you determined who was helping those imposters? The woman Lily overheard?" "We're handling it today," Robert assured him. "Thanks to Lily's observation, we know exactly who's been sabotaging our company from within. It's actually part of what I'm discussing with the new investors, strengthening our internal security protocols." James nodded, seemingly satisfied. "I hope it goes well. For what it's worth, I believe in what you're trying to do with the CardioGuard. My wife might still be here if technology like that had been available at the rural hospital where she first showed symptoms." The simple statement hit Robert hard. It was easy to think of the CardioGuard in terms of market potential and investment returns, but James's words reminded him of the human impact, the real lives that could be saved or lost. "Thank you for saying that," Robert said quietly. "Sometimes in the business side of things, it's easy to lose sight of why we started in the first place." As he stood to leave, Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "My personal number is on the back. Call me when you've made a decision about the scholarship offer. And regardless of what you decide, I'd like Lily to be a guest of honor at our product launch event next month, assuming today's meeting goes well." James accepted the card with a nod. "I'll talk to Lily. And thank you. Regardless of what we decide, your offer is incredibly generous." As Robert headed to his meeting with Avalon Ventures, he felt more centered and focused than he had in months. The previous day had been a turning point, not just in exposing the betrayal within his company, but in reminding him of the purpose behind the CardioGuard. It wasn't just about creating a successful business, it was about changing lives. The Avalon Ventures offices occupied the top floor of a sleek glass tower in downtown Boston. As Robert was escorted into a spacious conference room with panoramic views of the city, he was greeted by Jessica Winters, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense handshake and intelligent eyes. "Mr. Mitchell," she said warmly, "we're delighted you could finally meet with us. We've been trying to connect with you for quite some time. I recently discovered why those attempts were unsuccessful," Robert replied, deciding transparency was the best approach. "We've had a security breach at Mitchell Medical Technologies, a senior employee working with a competitor to undermine our fundraising efforts." Jessica's eyebrows rose. "That explains a lot. We were beginning to think you weren't interested in our investment." "On the contrary," Robert assured her, "Avalon's Emerging Markets Healthcare Initiative is exactly the kind of partnership we've been seeking for the CardioGuard." Over the next hour, Robert presented the CardioGuard technology, its development journey, and his vision for its deployment in underserved communities. Unlike the fake investors from the previous day, Jessica and her colleagues asked insightful questions that demonstrated genuine understanding of both the technology and its potential impact. 3 months later, the grand ballroom of the Hyatt Regency Boston Harbor was adorned with elegant blue and silver decorations. A banner spanning the entrance read, "CardioGuard Transforming Cardiac Care Worldwide." The launch event for Mitchell Medical Technology's revolutionary device had drawn hundreds of healthcare professionals, investors, media representatives, and public health advocates from across the globe. Robert Mitchell stood near the demonstration area, watching as attendees examined the CardioGuard units on display. The journey to this moment had been tumultuous, but the outcome had exceeded even his most optimistic projections. The investment from Avalon Ventures had come through within a week of their initial meeting, $15 million for a 20% stake in the company, with additional milestone payments tied to international expansion. The terms were far more favorable than anything Robert had dared hope for, providing not just financial stability, but also access to Avalon's extensive network of healthcare contacts in developing markets. The exposure of Patricia Reynolds as a corporate spy had sent shockwaves through the industry. The evidence against her had been overwhelming. Thousands of emails forwarded to Transcom executives, recorded phone calls discussing ways to undermine Mitchell Medical, and even a separate bank account where Transcom had deposited consulting fees for her services. She now faced industrial espionage charges, and Transcom was under federal investigation. "Quite a turnout," observed Jessica Winters, appearing at Robert's side with a glass of champagne. "You should be proud." "I am," Robert admitted, surveying the crowded room, "though I'm still wrapping my head around how quickly everything has changed. 3 months ago I was facing bankruptcy." Jessica smiled. "That's how it goes sometimes." Years of struggle followed by sudden breakthroughs. She nodded toward the main stage, where a large screen displayed images of the CardioGuard being used in various settings: rural clinics, emergency response vehicles, community health centers. "The pre-orders have exceeded our projections. The WHO partnership alone will put 5,000 units in underserved communities within the first year." "That was always the goal," Robert said, "creating technology that reaches the people who need it most." His gaze drifted to a corner of the ballroom where his wife Susan stood chatting with Megan. Their relationship had been slowly healing over the past months as the company's fortunes turned around. She had even started attending key meetings, offering her expertise in healthcare administration. Tonight, she looked happier than he had seen her in years, elegant in a midnight blue dress, her laughter carrying across the room. Near the entrance, Robert spotted James Chen and Lily arriving. James looked slightly uncomfortable in his new suit, but Lily was radiant in a purple dress, her eyes wide as she took in the elaborate decorations. "Excuse me," Robert said to Jessica, "there's someone I need to greet." As he approached the Chens, Lily spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Mr. Mitchell, this is amazing." Robert smiled broadly. "I'm so glad you could make it, Lily." "You too, James." James nodded, looking around at the opulent surroundings. "Quite a celebration." "None of which would be happening without Lily's help," Robert reminded him. "Have you had a chance to think about my offer?" After several weeks of consideration, James had tentatively accepted the scholarship for Lily, but had requested time to research schools thoroughly before making a final decision. "Actually," James said, "we have news. Lily was accepted to Benton Academy. She starts next semester." Robert's eyebrows rose. Benton Academy was one of the most prestigious schools for gifted children in New England, known for its innovative curriculum and exceptional record of placing graduates in top universities. "That's wonderful news," Robert said sincerely. "Congratulations, Lily." Lily beamed. "They have a special science program where students can design their own experiments, and 6 different languages to choose from. She's already decided to add French and Russian to her Mandarin," James added, with a mixture of pride and bemusement. "Apparently being trilingual isn't enough of a challenge." "I want to work for the United Nations someday," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "You need at least 3 languages for that." Robert laughed. "I have no doubt you'll achieve whatever you set your mind to, Lily." A chime sounded, indicating that the formal program was about to begin. Robert glanced toward the stage where the event coordinator was gesturing for him to approach. "I need to give my speech," he explained, "but afterward there's someone I'd like you both to meet. She's flown in from Guatemala specifically for this event." As Robert made his way to the podium, he felt a sense of completeness that had eluded him for years. The audience quieted as he took his place at the microphone, scanning the sea of faces before him: colleagues, investors, healthcare partners, and most importantly, his family. "3 years ago," he began, "I witnessed something that changed the course of my life. While visiting a rural clinic in Guatemala, I watched as a doctor struggled to save a patient experiencing cardiac distress with outdated, failing equipment. Despite the doctor's skill and dedication, the patient didn't survive, not because treatment wasn't possible, but because the right technology wasn't accessible. The room was silent, attendees captivated by the personal story behind the technology they had come to celebrate. That day, I made a promise to myself that I would find a way to bridge that gap, to create technology that could reach communities where healthcare infrastructure is limited, but the need is greatest. The CardioGuard was born from that promise. Robert continued, outlining the device's journey from concept to reality, acknowledging the contributions of his development team, the support of Avalon Ventures, and the dedication of everyone at Mitchell Medical Technologies. But the path wasn't always smooth, he admitted. There were moments when it seemed the CardioGuard might never reach the people who needed it. And that brings me to a story about an unexpected hero, someone without whom we wouldn't be here tonight. Robert gestured toward Lily in the audience. 3 months ago, when our company faced its darkest hour, an 8-year-old girl named Lily Chen stepped in to help with a crucial investor meeting when our translator fell ill. Not only did she provide flawless translation, but her intelligence and integrity uncovered a plot to steal our technology and prevent it from ever reaching the market. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the audience as Lily shrank slightly against her father, unused to being the center of attention. Lily's intervention saved not just our company, but our mission. And in the process, she reminded us all that integrity and compassion are values worth protecting, values that the CardioGuard itself represents. Robert paused, making eye contact with Lily, who was now smiling shyly. In honor of Lily's contribution, and to ensure that her mother's legacy continues to touch lives, Mitchell Medical Technologies is proud to announce the establishment of the Mei Lin Chen Foundation, which will provide healthcare technology to underserved communities and educational opportunities to exceptional young people who, like Lily, have the potential to change our world for the better. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom. James placed an arm around his daughter's shoulders, visibly moved by the tribute to his late wife. The Foundation's first initiative, Robert continued once the applause subsided, will be the deployment of 200 CardioGuard units to rural clinics throughout Guatemala, including the very clinic where the idea was born. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the physician whose determination I witnessed that day, has flown in to accept the first units and to help train local healthcare workers in their use. He gestured to a dignified woman in the front row, who stood to acknowledge the audience's applause. Dr. Vasquez reminded me recently that in medicine, timing is everything. Minutes matter. Access matters. The right technology in the right hands at the right moment can mean the difference between life and loss. The CardioGuard can't solve all the challenges facing global healthcare, but it can help level the playing field, one heartbeat at a time. As Robert concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey had been arduous, filled with setbacks and betrayals, but also with unexpected alliances and moments of grace. After the formal program ended and guests began mingling again, Robert brought Dr. Vasquez over to meet Lily and James. Dr. Vasquez, this is Lily Chen, the young translator I told you about, and her father, James. The Guatemalan doctor smiled warmly at Lily. Mr. Mitchell has told me how you helped save the CardioGuard. Many children in my country will have better lives because of your bravery. Lily, typically confident, seemed momentarily awed by the significance of this statement. I just did what my mum would have wanted, she said simply. The best tribute we can offer those we've lost is to help others in their name, Dr. Vasquez replied gently. Your mother would be very proud of you. James cleared his throat, clearly emotional. Dr. Vasquez, my wife was a professor of Chinese literature, but she always emphasized the importance of science and medicine to her students. She would be honored to know that her name is associated with bringing medical technology to those who need it most. As the evening progressed, Robert found a quiet moment with his wife Susan near the windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The city lights reflected on the dark water, creating a tapestry of shimmering points against the night sky. Jamie was disappointed he couldn't be here, Susan said, referring to their son who was away at a school science competition, one that Robert had made sure not to miss the previous weekend. I know, but winning the regional finals is a pretty good excuse, Robert replied with paternal pride. "Besides, he'll be at the European launch next month. I've already promised him a side trip to see the CERN facility while we're there." Susan smiled, linking her arm through his. "You know, when you first started this project, I thought you were chasing an impossible dream. I was so afraid you were gambling our future on something that would never materialize." "You weren't entirely wrong to worry," Robert admitted. "There were moments I doubted myself too. But you never gave up," she observed, "even when everything seemed to be falling apart." Robert's gaze drifted to where Lily was animatedly describing something to Dr. Vasquez, her hands gesturing expressively as she spoke. "Sometimes the universe sends help from unexpected places." Later that evening, as the event was winding down, Robert found Lily and James preparing to leave. "Before you go," he said, "there's something I'd like to give you, Lily." He handed her a small box wrapped in silver paper. Lily looked to her father, who nodded his permission before carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a miniature replica of the Cardioguard, crafted in crystal and mounted on a polished wooden base. A small plaque read, "To Lily Chen, whose courage and integrity helped bring this technology to the world. With eternal gratitude, Mitchell Medical Technologies." Lily traced the crystal model with her fingertip, her expression thoughtful. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Thank you." "It's just a small token of appreciation," Robert told her. "The real thanks is the foundation. Every life saved by one of those devices in Guatemala and everywhere else the foundation reaches will be part of your mother's legacy." James placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "And your legacy too, Lily. You've already begun building it, even at 8 years old." As they said their goodbyes, Robert was struck by how profoundly his life had changed in just 3 months. From the brink of failure to unprecedented success, from nearly losing everything to gaining a sense of purpose more meaningful than financial security could ever provide. The Cardioguard would reach thousands of patients who might otherwise go without vital care. The Mei-Lin Chen Foundation would expand that reach even further, while also providing educational opportunities to exceptional children like Lily. And Mitchell Medical Technologies was now positioned to develop additional technologies for underserved communities, with strong financial backing and a clear mission. All because a child had stepped forward at exactly the right moment, offering not just her language skills but her perception and integrity when they were desperately needed. As Robert watched Lily and James disappear into the elevator, he recalled something his grandfather used to say: "Sometimes the smallest hands build the strongest bridges." Tonight was proof of that wisdom. A bridge had been built between privilege and need, between technology and accessibility, between loss and legacy. And at the center of it all stood a remarkable 8-year-old girl who had simply done what her heart told her was right, changing countless lives in the process, including his own. "Ready to go?" Susan asked, appearing at his side with their coats. Robert nodded, taking one last look around the ballroom where his dream had been celebrated. "More than ready," he replied. "This is just the beginning." As they stepped out into the cool Boston night, Robert felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years. The Cardioguard would soon be helping patients around the world. His company was secure, his family was healing. And somewhere across the city, a brilliant young girl was holding a crystal reminder that one person, even a child, could change the course of many lives through a simple act of courage and compassion. The circle was complete, and a new one was just beginning. Fin da Historia. Did you enjoy this tale of unexpected connections and second chances? The story of Robert Mitchell and Lily Chen reminds us that sometimes our greatest allies come from the most unexpected places, and that integrity and compassion can transform lives in ways we never imagined. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring narratives that explore the depth of human connection and the power of doing what's right. Hit the like button if you believe in the ripple effect of kindness, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What unexpected helper has changed the course of your life? We'd love to hear your stories of serendipitous encounters and moments when a stranger's kindness made all the difference. Turn on notifications so you never miss our daily uploads of compelling human stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the beautiful ways our lives intertwine. Until our next journey together, remember that sometimes the smallest hands can indeed build the strongest bridges.